I'm an illustrator primarily. I illustrate children's books, and I have done for 25 years or more. Trained as an architect initially, actually, but found that training really useful when it was translated into working on a brief of a book, basically, instead of a brief for a client. So that was quite an interesting transition.
I'm Sarah Odedina. I work in publishing. I spend a lot of time in my professional career working with authors, mentoring authors as they write their books, as well as editing their books as we publish them. And I'm co-host with Eleanor Dobbs for this retreat, the Rock Retreat.
During one of the many lockdowns, I was having a very socially distanced cycle with my sister, Sarah Odedina, who worked with me on this residency. And we realised that what we wanted to do was run a residency and a retreat for people once it was all over. And we had a vision that there was going to be a really strong need and desire for people to meet in real life and gather together and bring out the best of what they've been sort of potting up inside themselves over the last few years.
We thought it would be really wonderful as we were hopefully coming out of a pandemic, to have the opportunity to bring people together in one place to celebrate, work on and create books and ideas for books for children.
So Sarah and I have worked together. She is a publisher, me as an illustrator. We've worked together a lot over the years, and we have very similar views about the need for publishing to become as inclusive as it should, because of the audience is as varied as it is. The authors and illustrators should be coming from just the same pattern of people. And we're a bit long in the tooth now. It's good, you know. I mean, 25 years of experience for me, more for her. It's time to give that back and to bring people together who can share quite a mysterious industry to people, and it's really important to disclose as much as you can to people so that they know how to get themselves started. Gibraltar is a place where I've been very well supported over the last few years in artistic ventures that I've done, be it murals, street art, working with schools. So I got very excited at the thought that Gibraltar would be able to support a residency like this. And it's such a fascinating place. I mean, that to me is the real pull for people.
When we first put the word out that we were going to be doing the retreat, we had over 80 applicants for the retreat, and we narrowed it down, and it was a really hard job to narrow it down to 27. So we've got 27 people, and it's a really fantastic range of people. We've got people who are interested in writing picture books, writing books for young readers between about 8 and 10, teen books, YA books, really quite kind of difficult and complicated subjects, and lots of wonderful artists, illustrators with such a beautiful range of styles. So I think if we could sort of plot it out on a piece of paper, we'd see that we had something for every area of children's books, because of course it's a very wide area. Children from as young as 6 months up to 18 are miles apart, so different in terms of their interests and what they want to be doing and reading. And I think the way we've targeted the workshop is to give each of those people that are here something that's specific to their interest and their ambition for their writing or illustrating.
We were focusing on bringing people from a broad spectrum. So we were very lucky to have the obvious link of other British overseas territories. Gibraltar is has a kind of brotherhood across the world that doesn't necessarily, it isn't a pyramid, it's an equal setting. We all come on the same level, and it's very interesting to be able to call somebody up in the Cayman Islands or BVI and sort of have that instant connection between each other. I mean, it's so fortunate. So we were able to quickly bring in some really interesting applications, and from across the world.
I'm an author, an illustrator, and recently a publisher of children's books. I work mainly on books that are for very young children, up to 7 years old. And I'm one of the facilitators working with the illustrators at the Rock Retreat. I know Sarah Odedina pretty well. We have worked on one more workshop such as this, which took place in Ghana. And so when she asked if I was interested, of course I jumped at the opportunity.
We've divided the workshops up into preschool and early years and older. And older is fiction, and that's the area that I'm working in. And fiction is anything from an 8-year-old to an 18-year-old. But actually, what I find when I'm teaching and when I'm having workshops with authors is that the principles of writing a good novel, whether that's for an 8-year-old or an 18-year-old, are the same. You know, strong, believable characters, good plot, a lovely setting, interesting themes that are going to engage the reader, a strong voice. The writer's voice has to be unique. So we talk about those elements of fiction writing, and it doesn't really matter what sort of story it's going to be for. So if the story involves animals instead of people, an anthropomorphic story, it's the same principles still apply.
They're obviously all interested in doing children's books, so they understand, they have some understanding of the different levels of the different segments within the children's book sort of publishing genres, and some of this retreat has been to give them extra knowledge of the levels of understanding that are different from 0 to 3 all the way up to 9 to 12. Sort of, you know, there's about 4 or 5 different levels of understanding.
One of the things that we asked people was not to bring work to continue working on something that they've started elsewhere, to have work initiated here, to develop work here, so that people are quite clear that they're getting inspiration from the place they're in. I know that Sarah set quite detailed sort of creative tasks for people to leave, to go, to discover things around Gibraltar, bring it back, do descriptive work on that, for example. And it was quite really interesting to see what people came back with.
As far as dealing with the commonalities and trying to attend to everyone, it really is quite pragmatic and practical. There's 10 illustrators and artists, and so I need to talk to 10 people individually. There are some common things which are mostly to do with the professional side of or the publishing side, very technical things, which I can talk to the group about. And then there are some skills-based things, like someone might want to try to use watercolor or gouache or something else. And for that I'm working with Eleanor, and I'm working with Jordan Cook as well. So we're dealing with all of these things at the same time. And then there's just the emotional and confidence building, which comes from really understanding how to nurture someone's or accentuate the positive, basically. Publishing, like any other media form, is very much one where confidence is one of your biggest tools. And I see many illustrators who have not the confidence, but they have the ability, but they stop themselves. So we try to, I know how to spot it. Thankfully, everyone here is quite open and quite optimistic, and I think that means they're going to make it one way or another.
To be published, you need an agent. That's how it works. It's very rare that anybody will be taken on by a publisher without having been filtered through an agent that they trust. And of course, the whole purpose of a lot of what people were here to gain was how to build up a portfolio of work to take to an agent, and the introductions to agents. We had a really good Zoom meeting that lasted several hours, one of the afternoons, with an agent from London who was able to run a whole big Q&A, for everybody there, and I think it was one of the highlights actually of the week. One of the parts that had a particular strength was the outreach that we did in schools. And the Kusuma Trust was extremely generous and made most of that outreach possible. And also Masbro Insurance. They knew that that's what they wanted to have their funds focused on, because it's the next generation, and I'm telling you, that was a real success. And I think for Sarah, because she hadn't run a residency where it had that sense of outreach before, and I think that's really inspired her to take that formula to Accra in Ghana, which is going to be the World Book Capital next year in June 23. And we're going to be taking the rock retreat there. We're going to be taking elements of the rock retreat. We're going to be taking an attendee from Gibraltar, so we're going to be doing a call out to make sure that somebody from here will be gumming with me as part of the rock retreat and attending a residency in Accra.
When Eleanor contacted us to participate in her rock retreat program, we're extremely excited, because any opportunity to have the children leave the classroom on an educational basis is extremely valuable, especially as young art students. So we took the Year 10s to the marketplace with Eleanor. We did loads of observational drawings, recording of conversations that we could overhear, and really observing and trying to understand the scene that we were in. I think for the students, seeing their teachers also participate in this workshop was extremely valuable for them. I think it was a great opportunity for them to relax, to explore, to understand how to record without being pedantic and observing from iPads or computers, etc. After the marketplace, we were invited to the Garrison Library, where Eleanor very kindly gave us another workshop, another opportunity for the students to relax, play, create in a beautiful garden that we have in Gibraltar.
Everybody's responded so brilliantly to the project and to the structure of the workshops, and I do a lot of writing exercises. So I say to people, write this about that and create a character that does this and show us somebody who's angry and so on and so forth. So I have lots and lots of writing exercises. And on the first day I thought, I'm not going to ask anybody to read anything out. I'm going to let everybody just settle down and see how they feel. But by the second day, everybody wanted to read out, and they wanted to share, and they wanted to group critique. And I think we've all learnt so much through that process. And for me, that's been really heartening, the openness, the solidarity, and actually the kindness, real kindness of all the participants.
Chris Priestley was a brilliant person to have with us on the residency. He illustrates and he writes, and he writes across the genres, right up to young adult, YA young adult fiction, and right down to picture books. So he knows his craft very well, and he was able to really help that group with a lot of the structure of their writing and how to pitch it, how to envisage it for their audience. Also, Chris was brought up in Gibraltar, we discovered. Yes. So his father had been in the military in the 60s, and when Sarah contacted Chris, because she's published him and worked with him over the years, so she mentioned that the residency was going to be Gibraltar, and there was this sort of pause, and he said, I haven't been back to Gibraltar since I was 12. So he came back for the first time since leaving at 12, and he remembers this is where he knew he wanted to become a creative, a writer. because he had a teacher whose name I've forgotten, but he hasn't, who told him that she thought he had talent. And we all have that teacher somewhere in our past who supported us. And the teacher that supported Chris was here in Gibraltar. That's where it started for him. The tales of Uncle Montague and the tales of terror, it's all quite gothic, and of course Gibraltar has that wonderfully gothic edge, really, doesn't it? The garrison town, the garrison and the galleons and the boats and the straits, and it's just brilliant.
A lot of the retreat and the workshops were about having fun. Like when we had the workshop where we had to draw babies, and that was so out of my comfort zone. You know, I draw buildings and I draw landscapes that stay very still.
So the Mummy and Baby workshop is a great example of asking illustrators and artists to observe and then watching them adapt their own styles to a situation that is changing literally every few minutes.
When you put a baby in front of you that's constantly wiggling, and it was again that pressure of being like, I've got to draw, it's got to be really good, and you have to keep reminding yourself it doesn't have to be good, it's just practicing a few lines and shapes. And I think once you broke it down, and like seeing everyone else's work was really good as well.
We weren't asking them to make finished paintings or anything like that. We were actually asking them to make visual notes, which is a quick sketch here, a quick study there, and you build up this whole body of work and observation over the hour that they had. And for some of them, they hadn't done things like that before. They've all been working within their own minds and imagination, and this was a chance to say your reference for your imagination will be better if you know how to observe people. And of course, these were the right people. These were mums, one baby, one toddler, one baby and two toddlers. So you have people who can walk all the way down to someone who couldn't walk. And I think they really took to that. And by the end of the hour, they started to find ways to get the visual notes that they wanted to get. One of the things I always emphasize with people that are trying to be artistic or commercially artistic is that they use sketches and notes as a way of building up a whole library of information which they can use later on. And that later on can be an hour, it could be a day, it could be a decade. I mean, it's there.
I have changed my way of working in a sense that when I start painting, I'm very much like, this will be the finished product and this will be the final thing and it's going to be perfect. Whereas that retreat taught me that it was the sketching that was important, and you know, you had lots of other things behind the final thing.
My first time in Gibraltar, and I never really thought about Gibraltar too much. Like, I didn't really think about it in any great depth, just as a place to come to. But it is so totally inspiring for people who come from similar places, you know, similar former colonies, or to come here and see another version of what they know, but presented in such a charming, quirky way. So it's been a very positive experience, and I'm hoping we get to do more of these retreats right here because it makes sense.
I'm really looking forward to seeing some of the output from the authors, because it's going to be a response to Gibraltar as much as anything.
I think I've met 30 people that have completely been exactly what we wanted them to be. You know, they're on the cusp of doing something fantastic. Some of them are already doing fantastic things. And we've managed, the four facilitators, we've managed to get them to start networking and talking to each other, think about working together, staying in touch. I think that's really important. And I think they know they don't have to do it alone, which is the biggest problem on any struggling artist. You always think you have to do it alone.
I was always interested about the world behind it and the publishing world, but as I studied fine art, I never really got to see that side, and to have that opportunity to meet people who had worked in the industry for years, and other creatives as well. it was really interesting, and you could ask questions that you wouldn't normally be able to ask to like Ken, who was running the illustration workshop.
So people came here and admitted that they were nervous. They had sort of imposter syndrome, as we all know we all have, and left without that.
I went into it completely open mind. I had nothing that I had wanted to work on or any books I wanted to explore. But it was interesting to work with other people in the workshop who did have ideas for books, and they knew what they wanted to do and they just wanted help with it. So it was a really nice mix of levels, I suppose, and experience. It feels like such a big thing when you think about illustrating a book, publishing it, but then talking them through, it was like, it is difficult, but you can get there. And if you put the work in and if you keep sketching, then there are doors there, that if you knock on them, they can open. So it's definitely changed my way of thinking, which is, I need a bit of a shake-up, because you can get stuck in your own practice, can't you?
Davina Barbara, she trusted us to, when we gave her the pitch of what we wanted to do, they supported us financially, they supported us logistically, and then with that, the other people were confident, other businesses and charities in Gibraltar had the confidence to support us also. So I'm grateful for all of that, because we were able to fund, through what we raised here in Gibraltar, we were able to fund 7 people who would never have been able to access a residency like this, and from across the globe as far as Montserrat. And that's all thanks to the support. So I think that's the one thing I come away with, that sense of gratitude. Every other year we're going to be back in Gibraltar, and that's going to be how we structure the upcoming rock retreats. It gives everybody a time to breathe, as it were, and the next layer of people to come up, who feel that they would benefit from a residency like this, and then, do it in a concentrated way like that. One of the important aspects of this was to be able to conceive of a publication, so to publish a compilation of the work that's made, so that every time we run a rock retreat, there's a publication to summarise the work that's been created. We have gathered together everybody's submissions now. The designer's starting to work on it, and we'll be publishing that in the September, October. We'll make sure that for the literary festival in Gibraltar in November, where I'm going to be there presenting and kind of working with people and stuff. It's going to be really good fun, and we'll bring the book to that.